There's something your body does every single day that science still can't fully explain. Contagious, unstoppable. And by the end of this sentence, some of you are already doing it. Neuropsychologist Robert Provine from the University of Maryland spent his entire career studying the things your body does without asking. Laughter, yawning, sneezing. And here's what he found. Roughly every other person yawns just from reading about yawning, not from seeing someone yawn, not from hearing the sound, just text on a page, and the jaw starts moving. And here's the problem. Nobody actually knows why this happens. There are theories, brain scan data, 6 months of experiments with a tortoise named Alexandra, but no definitive answer. Yawning is one of the dumbest gaps in neuroscience. Not the most important one, sure, but it's annoying. Let's figure it out. Fair warning, some of this gets unsettling. First, the big myth. Yawning is for oxygen. Everyone thinks so. Everyone's wrong. Back in 1987, Provine tested it. He changed carbon dioxide levels in the air, put people in oxygen tents. It had zero effect on how often they yawned. Gas composition has nothing to do with it. So, what's it for? There's a guy who seems to have gotten closer to the answer than anyone else. Andrew Gallup, an evolutionary biologist at SUNY Polytechnic. His idea sounds almost insultingly simple. Yawning is an air conditioner for the brain. The brain burns through 40% of the body's metabolic energy and heats up like a laptop with 30 tabs open. And when you yawn, 3 things happen at once. You take a deep breath, you stretch your jaw, and blood rushes to your head. Altogether, it's like a fan kicking in when the processor overheats. And Gallup didn't just guess this, he tested it. Press a warm compress to your forehead and watch a video of people yawning. 41% of people yawn. Cold compress? 9%. And if you make someone breathe only through their nose? 0. Absolute 0. Complete shutdown of contagious yawning. So if you don't want to yawn in a meeting, breathe through your nose. Free life hack from neuroscience. There's another thing that got me. In 2016, Gallup measured how long a yawn lasts across 24 species of mammals. A mouse yawns for about 0.8 of a second. A human, around 6 seconds. And it turned out that yawn duration almost perfectly matches brain weight, a correlation of 0.91. The heavier the brain, the longer the yawn. As if the body is measuring out a dose of cooling to match the size of what needs to be cooled down. But all of this is spontaneous yawning, a reflex as ancient as the fish jaw. What we're really interested in is something else entirely. Contagious yawning. And that's a whole different story. Because contagious yawning doesn't work through temperature or gases, it runs through the social brain. And this is where things get uncomfortable. In 2017, neuroscientist Georgina Jackson from the University of Nottingham ran an experiment. 36 people watched videos of others yawning. Half were told to yawn freely, and the other half to hold it back with everything they had. And here's what they found. You cannot suppress a contagious yawn. When you try to hold it in, the urge to yawn doesn't decrease. It grows. Clench your jaw? Worse. Hold your breath? Even worse. The brain saw someone else's yawn, launched the program, and canceling it is not up to you. Kind of like sneezing, except social. But Jackson didn't stop there. Using TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, she measured the excitability of the motor cortex in each participant, and she found a pattern. The higher the neural excitability, the harder it is for a person not to yawn. And then, a connection that really makes you think. The exact same type of heightened motor excitability is at the core of tics in Tourette's syndrome. Contagious yawning and involuntary mimicking of other people's movements, same category of phenomena. For most people, the threshold is high enough that it stops at yawns. For some, the threshold is lower. Okay, you can't suppress it, but why does it even exist? The first answer that comes to mind, empathy. We yawn because we're reading someone else's state, and there's data for this. Italian scientists Ivan Norsha and Elisabetta Palagi observed 109 people in their everyday lives for an entire year, not in a lab, but at work, at home, in cafes. The conclusion was simple. The only thing that predicts whether you'll catch a yawn is how close you are to the person who yawned. Relatives are more contagious than friends, friends more than acquaintances, acquaintances more than strangers. Gender, ethnicity, setting, none of it matters. Same thing with dogs. Your dog is more likely to yawn after you than after a stranger. Attachment determines contagion. And now, the experiment that changed how I look at yawning people. In 2015, psychologist Brian Rundle from Baylor University tested 135 people. First, a questionnaire measuring psychopathic traits. Then, videos of people yawning. The result? People who scored high on emotional coldness yawned back noticeably less often. Rundle himself was careful to add, not yawning doesn't make you a psychopath, but there is neurological overlap. The same deficit in affective response that keeps a person from catching someone else's yawn also sits at the foundation of psychopathy. So it turns out, contagious yawning is a tiny, unconscious marker. It's not a diagnosis, but it's an indicator of how tuned in your brain is to the people around you. And you don't choose this. Your brain decides for you. Empathy is an elegant explanation. But evolution doesn't hand out prizes for elegance. Why would our ancestors need contagious yawning if it had nothing to do with making it to morning? Turns out, it did. In 2022, Gallup ran an experiment with eye tracking. Participants watched videos of people yawning and then took a test, searching for snakes among neutral images. And after watching the yawns, they found snakes faster. Not frogs, not flowers, only snakes. Contagious yawning selectively sharpens threat detection. Gallup's idea? When someone in the group yawns, it's a signal. My alertness is dropping. The observer's brain automatically compensates by switching into a heightened threat detection mode. One falls asleep, the rest perk up. Contagious yawning isn't a glitch, it's a silent alarm system. But do reptiles have it? Anna Wilkinson from the University of Lincoln decided to find out. For 6 months, she trained a red-footed tortoise named Alexandra to yawn on command. Then sat 11 other tortoises next to her and waited. Not a single one yawned. Not once during the entire experiment. Wilkinson won an Ig Nobel Prize for this, and at the same time produced a perfectly serious scientific finding. Contagious yawning requires a social brain. Solitary reptiles don't have one. Humans, chimpanzees, dogs, and wolves do. And one more fact that undermines the most popular explanation. People who are blind from birth also yawn contagiously. From sound. Provine noticed this as early as 1986. And in 2019, Jolie Mascheroni from London's City University showed that congenitally blind people yawn even from touch. They feel an android with a moving jaw with their hands, and they yawn. Mirror neurons, visual imitation, none of it is required. Contagious yawning travels through a channel that runs deeper than sight. All right, let's put it all together. Spontaneous yawning, ancient, hundreds of millions of years old, pure physiology, brain cooling. Contagious yawning, a layer built on top. It appeared much later in social species. It uses the motor cortex, empathy, and group attunement to do one simple thing. When one member of the pack powers down, the rest power up. You don't yawn because you're bored. 200,000 years ago, your ancestor was sitting by a fire, saw the guy next to him yawn, and the brain instantly switched. Someone's falling asleep. I need to stay sharper. In a meeting, on the subway, reading this script, you're still doing it. If you didn't yawn, you're in the minority. And if you did, your brain is working. Watching the pack, even when the pack is just you and a screen.